you're well. I read something in Genesis 12 and Genesis 20 that I think are of great interest to me, and I wanted to share it with you. In Genesis chapter 12, Abraham goes to Egypt because there is famine in his land, and he goes there to look for food, and of course he goes with his family. And they agree with Sarah that she's going to say that she is his sister and not his wife, so that he will not be killed, and that they will get the food and all of the other things that they need. And this thing repeats itself again in Genesis 20, where Abraham meets Abimelech, and the same thing happens. They agree with Sarah that they would say that they are siblings, so that Abraham does not get killed. Yeah, but in both scenarios, Sarah is taken in the first scenario in Genesis 12 by the Pharaoh, yeah, and in Genesis 20 by Abimelech to be their bride, okay, to be their bride, of course. And they are taken in because she's taken in because she is beautiful. And chapter 12 records that even the prince of Pharaoh and all others who worked for Pharaoh recognized how beautiful Sarah was. So the beauty of Sarah was, evident and could be seen. So Abraham knows that God has promised him a son, yeah? And he actually, in a certain chapter also there, he pleads, God finds out that he's a bit sad and worried and asks him what's up, and he says he does not have an heir, yeah, to all the wealth that God has given him. And God has made a promise to him that he is going to give him a son. So Abraham knows that he has to stay alive because he believes God, yeah? He has to stay alive for him to experience the fulfilled promises of God in his life. But then he is giving away something so precious, something so important. The reason for Abraham giving away Sarah, yeah, is so that he stays alive. But when these men are taking in Sarah, they are taking in Sarah as wife, yeah? And when someone takes you in as a wife, knowing each other, in an intimate way is obvious. So Abraham is giving the purity of his wife to another man, yeah, so that he stays alive, yeah. He thinks that in his foolishness, or in our foolishness as men, he thinks that the only important thing about the promise of God coming to pass is his life. But he's forgetting that the promise of God depends on Sarah's life as well. Because remember, he also had a son with Hagar, who was an Egyptian woman, and who Sarah gave up to him, yeah, to go and have a son with, and they had Ishmael. But God reminds him that my promise was not with Ishmael. My promise is with Isaac, with your son, whom Sarah is going to give birth to. Yeah. So Sarah is just as important, or the purity and the womb of Sarah is just as important in the fulfillment of the promise of God, just as Abraham's life is important, all right? But Abraham thinks that his life is more important than the purity and the womb of Sarah. And in both cases, funnily enough, because God understands the importance of the purity of Sarah in this story, he preserves Sarah. So the Pharaoh does not sleep with Sarah, and so does Abimelech, and none of them touch her. And so God preserves her purity, even though her husband has given her away so freely to be able to protect his life. And this reminded me that sometimes we think that all I need to do is to be able to breathe. Just breathe so that the promises of God are fulfilled in my life. But that is not true, yeah? He requires me to not only stay alive, but also to stay pure. Sometimes we give our talents so cheaply outside because of how people recognize, our talents or the giftings that God has given us. Everybody notices, just the way Sarah's beauty was so noticeable. People notice how we are talented, how this and that is unique in our lives, and we end up giving that out so cheaply, and in a way that is impure, one, and two, in a way that it is going to be misused, and not preserved for what God has ordained for it to, to do on the earth and through our lives. And so I'm here to encourage you that do not just look at your life alone, that so long as you're breathing, the promises of God will come to pass. But I believe that He is speaking so particularly about some things that He has given us that we are taking lightly, and handling carelessly and misusing just because as long as I'm breathing, it will happen. As long as I'm breathing, this and that will come to pass for me. But God is also interested in the purity of the thing that He gave you. All right. God is interested in the purity of your body. He's interested in the purity of the gift that He gave you. He's interested in the purity of your mouth. He's interested in the purity of your heart. He's interested in the purity of your mind. All right. So I'm here to encourage you to take care of your life and your gift. God bless you.